Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a seriously fascinating data-driven health philosophy brought to the table by human biologist Gary Brecka during a really deep dive conversation with Dr. Phil. We're going to look closely at some striking wellness data, decode the hidden patterns behind why some people just seem to thrive while others slowly decline, and explore this wild idea that a ton of chronic conditions might actually be rooted in simple, everyday nutrient deficiencies.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever stopped to think about how we usually manage our health? I mean, for most of us, we literally wait until there's a full-blown crisis before we take things seriously. We just kind of ignore those quiet, everyday signals our bodies are sending us, right? We just assume they're a normal part of getting older, up until the exact moment a doctor hands us a terrifying diagnosis. But what if those clues were already there? What if they existed in your blood work, your sleep patterns, and your daily habits years before things went wrong?
So here is our roadmap for The Explainer. We'll start off with the flashing red light, move into the longevity paradox, and explore a concept called the soil and the leaf. From there, we'll decode some actual blood work, uncover what's known as the folic acid trap, and finish up with a super actionable 7-day reset.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the flashing red light and why we wait until it's broken.
Gary Brecka drops a truly wild statistic right out of the gate here. He points out that about 80% of people are walking around today operating at only 50% of their true normal. I mean, let that sink in for a second. We're running on half power and we don't even realize it. To explain why, he uses this brilliant car mechanic analogy. Think about it. You're driving down the highway and suddenly a red warning light pops on. Your first thought is, man, I really should have gotten this checked before it got this bad. And honestly, that is exactly how most people treat their own bodies. We brush off warning signs like pure exhaustion, unexplained weight gain, brain fog, anxiety, or terrible sleep. We basically just wait until the dashboard light is flashing red, until a heart issue or diabetes literally forces us to pay attention.
Moving on to Section 2, the longevity paradox, spending more, living less.
So what does this wait-and-see approach look like on a massive countrywide scale? Well, Dr. Phil points out a staggering paradox here. Check out this jarring statistic. The United States is currently ranked 66th in the world for life expectancy. 66th? And what's even more concerning, for the first time in recorded history, our life expectancy is actually going backward.
But here is the real paradox. Despite sitting at 66th place in life expectancy, the U.S. is the absolute largest spender on healthcare worldwide. We are pouring a mind-blowing $5 trillion a year into the system. It's totally wild to think about, but it clearly proves one thing. Just throwing more money at the problem definitely does not equal better health outcomes.
In fact, for being the absolute biggest spender on the planet, the U.S. currently leads the world in these 5 super alarming categories. We're number 1 in morbid obesity, type 2 diabetes, multiple chronic diseases, infant mortality, and maternal mortality. Dr. Phil uses this data to argue a pretty crucial point. We just can't outsource our wellness anymore. We have to wake up and become the active managers of our own health journey.
And that brings us to Section 3, the soil and the leaf. Reframing chronic illness.
If the current healthcare system isn't keeping us healthy, how do we actually fix this massive decline in wellness? Well, we shift the focus over to Brecka's core philosophy. Look, modern medicine is extraordinarily good at catastrophic crisis intervention. If you get into an accident or have an acute emergency, you absolutely want a doctor. But for chronic, everyday issues, Brecka advocates for what he calls a plant physiology approach. Imagine you're looking at a palm tree with a rotting leaf. A true botanist wouldn't just treat the leaf, right? They test the soil to see what nutrients, like nitrogen, are missing from the ground. Brecka argues that human beings are exactly the same. Before we jump to the conclusion that the body is permanently broken, we really need to ask, is it simply missing the raw materials, the vitamins, the minerals, or the amino acids that it literally needs to do its job?
Let's look at some proof in Section 4, Decoding the Blood Work, Dr. Phil's lab results.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that Dr. Phil actually put his own skin in the game here. He turned over his own personal lab results to serve as a real-world case study for us. Let's walk through this data. First up, Dr. Phil's hemoglobin A1C is at a 5.0, which Brecka points out is absolutely excellent blood sugar control. And that's especially impressive for someone who was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic over 40 years ago. However, the data also reveals some specific spots where Dr. Phil's body is missing exactly what it needs to function optimally, specifically when we look at his hematocrit and homocysteine levels.
Take a look at the hematocrit level sitting at 51. Basically, hematocrit measures your blood viscosity.
Brecka explains that Dr. Phil's body is producing red blood cells faster than they die off, which makes the blood super crowded and thick. It's behaving way more like sticky motor oil instead of flowing like water. But you know what's crazy? The fix isn't some complex, expensive pharmaceutical. It's just a simple, routine blood donation to thin the blood right back down into a normal, healthy range.
Then we have homocysteine at 22.6, which is pretty highly elevated. Homocysteine is an amino acid, and when it rises too much, it cruises through your arteries and literally irritates the lining. So what happens? The arteries clamp down, and boom, your blood pressure shoots up. Brecka explains that high blood pressure isn't always some underlying genetic disease. A lot of times, you just inherited a poor ability to metabolize this specific amino acid. The fix here? Simply supplying the body with a missing nutrient called trimethylglycine, or TMG. Once you supplement that, the level drops and the whole arterial system can finally relax.
Which perfectly sets up Section 5, the folic acid trap, the MTHFR gene mutation. So you might be wondering, why are so many of us missing these exact nutrients in the first place? Well, very often it comes down to something called the MTHFR gene mutation. This is present in roughly 46% of the population, which is just a massive number of people. This gene severely impairs your body's ability to convert folate and folic acid into a form that your cells can actually use. So nearly half of us have this, which means our bodies are essentially rejecting a completely widely distributed vitamin. And this brilliantly illustrates the problem. Putting synthetic folic acid into an MTHFR body is exactly like pulling crude oil out of the ground and dumping it straight into your car's gas tank. The car simply doesn't understand that fuel source, right? It can't run on it. Your body needs the refined gasoline, which in this case is a natural nutrient called methylfolate, in order to actually run properly.
But here is where it gets incredibly tricky for us. Back in the 1990s, the US began spraying synthetic folic acid on basically our entire grain supply. It is literally in all of our fortified and enriched breads, cereals, and pastas. For the 46% of people walking around with this gene mutation, consuming this synthetic chemical slows down the breakdown of fight-or-flight neurotransmitters, which causes chronic anxiety. Plus, it drastically impairs the pace of the gut, causing severe bloating and digestive issues. Brecka's stance is that the immediate fix is simply checking your labels and swapping over to unfortified whole foods, real sourdough, or organic options.
Finally, let's look at Section 6, the 7-day reset. Actionable daily habits. The absolute best part about all of this is that you do not need expensive genetic testing or complicated labs to start feeling better today. Brecka drops a pretty heavy truth here. We have actually normalized not feeling normal. We just assume that waking up with brain fog, having stiff joints, or feeling utterly exhausted by 3 p.m. is a natural consequence of aging. It isn't. Often, it's just a sign of a nutrient deficiency or poor daily habits that you can literally take control of right now.
So here is Brecka's zero-cost 7-day protocol. It's super actionable. First up, take all enriched or fortified foods out of your diet for just 1 week. See how you feel. Second, set a strict alarm to go to bed at the exact same time every single night. Third, turn your phone on airplane mode, keep it out of your bed entirely, and cool your pitch-black room down to 68 degrees while doing some slow breathing exercises. And finally, within 30 minutes of waking up, get natural sunlight directly into your eyes and hydrate with just a little bit of mineral salt in your water. Just try that for 7 days and watch how your energy shifts. To really sustain this long-term, Brecka and Dr. Phil point to the 4 macro pillars of longevity. That's eating a whole food diet free of processed ingredients, making physical mobility absolutely non-negotiable in your routine, prioritizing deep sleep, and vitally, community and connection. In fact, both men point out a pretty staggering piece of mortality data. Isolation and loneliness can literally cut a human being's life expectancy in half. Connection is truly medicine for us. Which brings us to our final thought. The data clearly shows that we have an incredible amount of control over our own longevity, but only if we are willing to step up and be the active custodian of our health. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you going to keep waiting for the dashboard light to flash red, endlessly treating that rotting leaf? Or are you finally ready to test your soil and take intentional ownership of your daily habits?